Along with extra time and lower instances of unpredictable weather, there are a variety of benefits that come with fall ESN application. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
Bernard Tobin here at the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity Public Trust Summit. Joined now by Ashley Bruner. She is the Director of Research and Stakeholder Engagement. Ashley, how's it going?
Very great. Thank you for joining us today.
You've been kind enough to share the results of your annual public trust research. And I guess let's dig into it a little bit. We've had this conversation year after year for several years now. And I guess I'm getting a sense, overall here, that we're seeing more public pessimism, indifference, maybe some cynicism creeping in here about our food system.
You're right. In fact, what used to be indifference is now increasingly becoming pessimism and negativity. We're seeing some drops in some core questions where people aren't just indifferent, they're actually falling into the negative category.
What's driving that from your perspective, Ashley? I mean, there's a lot of factors here. We have a lot of people trying to influence public opinion. There's so many sort of touch points. What do you see?
It's a couple things. One is that overall context of years of high inflationary pressures, followed before that of global pandemic. So I do think that people are a little bit tired, a little bit cranky, a little bit pessimistic towards everything. But we are seeing it specific to the food system as well. I think food costs, of course, are a driver of that pessimism. And it's hard to connect with Canadians. But this year we did some research and we found that even though many don't understand how food pricing is determined, those that do have more positive views of the Canadian agri-food system. So that public awareness and education and engagement piece around cost of food is important.
One thing that we've seen here as well, something we haven't seen in the past, is maybe a decline in, I guess, the perception of farmers as stewards of the land, and even the federal regulators, CFIA, and their ability to sort of regulate food. You're seeing a decline there.
We're seeing a couple significant declines specific to those two areas. Farmers as good stewards of the environment, we are seeing a softening, which is worrisome. Farmers are generally viewed very positively. They're the most trusted, they're the most transparent. So any kind of movement related to that group is definitely something to keep an eye on. Distrust with CFIA and kind of federal government agencies. We are seeing that in the data as well, with the caveat that there's a political discussion going on and great dissatisfaction, so it might be a bit of a combining the two, the government and the political side of things.
No, actually, I want to talk more about what's happening there, especially when it comes to trust. But before we do that, let's talk about some good news. You got some interesting numbers here. Canadians are less worried about some things that we've talked about a lot in the past and will continue in the future. Pesticides and drug residues, for example.
You're right. We're seeing significant decreases in concern on some of those key food and farming issues. What's at play to some extent was last year it was a bit of a high level watermark of some of those concerns, and we're seeing a softening. So the drop in those concerns, it's not a record low, but it is kind of back to that middle ground that we typically tread.
You also did something interesting here. You looked at perceptions of different sectors, agriculture, education. And there, we talked about maybe some of the pessimism seeping into agriculture, but there was agriculture and food at the top of the list.
You're right. Agriculture and food is the most trusted industry in Canada, according to our research. We're more trusted than healthcare, education, banking, all kinds of industries. So this is good news for our sector. Canadians are hard. Food is very personal. It's people have a lot of opinions on it, but overall, when compared to others, we are still quite trusted.
I want to dig into honesty, of something that you talked a lot about here. And over the years, there was always, and it continues, a need and a discussion about transparency. We have to tell people about how food is produced, what we do on the farm. But you're saying transparency now is not necessarily enough. People are looking for honesty. Tell us about that.
You're right. I've come up with a new trust KPI of honesty. After years of tracking trust and transparency as kind of those two key metrics, we're adding honesty into the mix. I think transparency, we're doing great. I think there's a ton of information out there, accurate, clear, trusted, objective, including our own research. But I think we're missing that human connection somehow. Canadians, there's still a disconnect, and it might be that honesty view. So this is our first year testing it. People think we're doing okay. Most are unsure. It's not as polarized as the direction of the food system, so that's more good news. So this is a good benchmark measure that we've instituted to build from.
Ashley, when we talk about trust, you mentioned cynicism, sort of becoming more and more prevalent in Canada. And when you talk about trust, you said, communicating in a way that people feel you are not trying to trick them. I mean, again, that's cynicism. How do you deal with that?
Consistency. Over time, we're not going to solve the fact that people do have their guards up when it comes to food-related information. I think it's a function of potentially bad actors where people can't trust information at sometimes, depending on who it comes from. So I think we all need to fight the good fight, be spokespeople of positivity and of objective, accurate information, and to really assure Canadians we're not trying to fool them, we're not trying to mislead them, we're not trying to bring them down a wrong path. We really are just trying to provide healthy, affordable food for themselves and their families.
Final thing, and that is, building on that, you talked about some of the messaging buckets that continue to sort of, be something that farmers and the food community can lean on. And, the three of them, really starts with the food system and the critical role it plays in the health of Canadians.
Yes, we did some message testing around some core areas related to food and farming, and we were happily surprised to hear that Canadians recognize our important role in their lives when it comes to social cohesion, when it comes to economic impact, when it comes to providing nutritional food. Canadians strongly agree, over 9 in 10, that we are critical in those roles. So that is good news. Canadians, at the heart of it, do understand the important role that we play.
Well, great insights as always, Ashley. Really appreciate you making some time for Real Agriculture. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.